Hello and welcome back to Big Damn Love, a series where a bloke nearly in his 30s talks exclusively about things that make him happy, because seriously, I've had a decade of being on the internet talking about just stuff that annoys me, and it doesn't end well. It does not end well. It's bad for your mental health. I'm going unscripted this week because I had an episode planned, and then I was reminded of something and went, why have I not talked about that yet? And now seems to be the perfect time to do so. The reason? The last two times I made Big Damn Love episodes here on YouTube, I talked about Gremlins and Gremlins 2 The New Batch, two of my favourite films of all time. Those movies have a sort of spiritual sequel. Not about Gremlins, far from it, in fact, but about diminutive little monsters that spread, take over, and try to dominate a small town. And a young kid and the girl next door who he's in love with have to team up with an adorable little puppet character to foil their plans and stop them from spreading even further. The film I'm talking about is what's in the title and what's there behind me. It's 1998's Small Soldiers. Ooh, okay, this is my first time using this gizmo mug gift I got. It looks amazing, but it is impractical. I'm on the verge of spilling it every 2 seconds. Small Soldiers begins when the Heartland Toy Company is absorbed into Globotech, and their CEO commissions two toy creators, Larry and Irwin, to merge their ideas that are pitched together. One of an elite force of soldiers, and one of an educational sci-fi story about these interplanetary creatures. And says, right, kids don't like learning and the soldiers need someone to fight, so make the soldiers cool, make them the good guys, and have them beat the crap out of the monsters. They're the bad guys now. So it's so much G.I. Joe, so much Masters of the Universe kind of stuff. But the thing is, he really wants to be impressed, and as a result, one of the guys uses the military chips that they have amongst Globotech's resources to fuel the toys, which means that they can learn and they can do things much more impressively than most other electronic toys could at the time. Problem is, they have a mission, and their mission is to kill. The Commando Elites, led by Major Chip Hazard, voiced by Tommy Lee Jones, are terrifying. They are the heroes of the toy line, but of course their objective, as built into their programming based on all the information put into the systems about them, is to find and kill the Gorgonites by any means necessary. That means anyone standing in their way is also fodder for their tactics. The Gorgonites, meanwhile, are led by Archer, voiced by Frank Langella, and they are based on their original idea. They are gentle, and they just want to live in peace. They want to get back to their home world of Gorgon, which of course doesn't exist, but that's what they want to do. So when they're under attack, what do? They hide. They don't fight back. They're peaceful. Just because we've been told that they're the bad guys doesn't mean that they are. Enter Gregory Smith as Alan Abernathy, or Greetings Alan, now shut up, which is my favourite line in the whole film, who is the kid who runs his dad's toy store when his dad is away, and sort of finagles a batch of the Small Soldiers toy line off of the delivery driver's truck delivery driver played by, what's the character called? Hang on. What is the character called? The character's called Joe. He delivers stock to this old school toy store, and he manages to convince Joe, played by Dick Miller, Mr. Futterman himself, Joe Dante's good luck charm, to give him at least one box of them, and they'll just pretend that they've fallen off the van or been delivered to the wrong place. And at night, the Commando Elite break out, trash the store, and kill, as far as they think, all of the Gorgonites, apart from Archer, who is at home with Alan. Alan's massive crush, Christy, played by Kirsten Dunst, it helps him put the toy store back together the next day, but when they realise that if the Commando Elite are still after stuff, they're still after Archer, that means the Gorgonites weren't killed. They're out there somewhere. So, the story becomes Alan and Christy getting hold of the Gorgonites, trying to find them, and trying to stop the Commando Elite before they hurt somebody or kill somebody. It's a kid's film, so by the end of Act 2 they kind of do that, and then the ante has to be upped when Chip Hazard survives and recruits the rest of the toys in the factory. I love this film because it's so many of my favourite things together. I love puppetry in film, practical effects. This film is, unfortunately, one of the victims of late 90s, mid-90s in development, executive meddling, where the executives were like, but it would be cheaper to do it in CGI. Let's do it in CGI. After the practical work had already begun. So, but it means you get this fascinating mix of the work of Stan Winston and his workshop and Industrial Light and Magic doing the CGI. Because of the textures of the characters and the figures, they look a certain way, so that when reinterpreted in the computer animation, they kind of look the same. They move a little more fluidly, and they're only really used for big action shots. There's loads of puppetry shots in the film still, but it isn't jarring. It's like Jurassic Park 5 years prior. It's not weird to look at, because the way they use the lighting and the texturing, not many shots stand out as dated. So that's to be commended. The ILM have managed to sustain the look of the film, and it's prevented it from aging. The only thing that's really aged the movie is the 90s haircuts and everyone wearing flannel. Another weird bit of studio meddling that affected this film, but kind of in a good way, I guess, was Joe Dante was originally creating a movie aimed at teens. This was meant to be a bit dark, a bit creepy, a bit more like Gremlins, but halfway through, executives went, want to sell toys though, don't we? We've already got some tie-in deals going on with Burger King and wasn't Mattel, but like companies like that. So I think it was Kenner actually. So I was like, so let's make it more kid friendly. And as a result, they had to cut back on some of the more gruesome stuff that was going to be in the film. But this was during filming, so like with the puppetry being replaced by CGI, they were about a third of the way in, and then were told that they had to do this. Joe Dante is an amazing director, not just because of how he executes his vision and brings the films about, but because he juggles so much interference in a lot of his projects and still manages to make a cohesive film. Dude is to be commended. There's a few recurring elements of Joe Dante movies, people who pop up in little cameo roles that you may recognise from previous films like The Burbs and Gremlins 2. But another recurring element is Jerry Goldsmith scoring the film. This is one of Jerry Goldsmith's finest scores. The marching sound of the soundtrack is wonderful, as is the pop soundtrack. This film utilises a lot of late 70s and 80s rock, and with a few exceptions, things like Spice Girls, which plays a pivotal role in the climax, which is brilliant. And as a result, the album charted quite well for a film soundtrack back when it came out. If you ever wanted to see Queen incorporated into a creepy montage where a bunch of scary toys are arming up using household tools to violently attack people, this is the film for you. Weird little fact about this movie. What made it work? Like Gizmo before him, certain elements were asked to be kept in, allegedly, by Steven Spielberg, because DreamWorks and Amblin produced this movie. This is an early DreamWorks venture, and Spielberg did that with Gremlins. He was the one who said, hey, Columbus, your script's fun, but don't make Gizmo the evil gremlin, keep him around. And they did, and he is iconic and a big part of why that film is successful. We're not entirely clear as to what Spielberg had influence over on this movie, but we do know that his sister? His sister, Anne Spielberg, who is a writer, a screenwriter, was one of the writers on the script. And Spielberg was one of the producers through Amblin and DreamWorks. But both of them are uncredited in the final movie, which is unusual because it's like, did they not like the end product? If you watch the behind-the-scenes feature out on the DVD, or you look it up on YouTube, Spielberg appears in the behind-the-scenes quite a lot. So for him to then kind of back out seemed odd. Maybe there was something going on behind the scenes. I'd like to think everybody got on well, but you never know. This business is, unfortunately, one where people butt heads quite often. The human cast are excellent. Gregory Smith as Alan, Kirsten Dunst as Christy, Kevin Dunn as Alan's dad. Kevin Dunn, most of you, based on our analytics and your ages, will probably know him as the dad from Transformers, because he's always the angry dad. He's really good. Anne Magnuson as Irene is great. Phil Hartman's the neighbour. Phil Hartman, in his last role that was put out there, the film's dedicated to his memory, SNL alum, Troy McClure, Lionel Hutz from The Simpsons. This guy's one of the funniest mofos to have ever existed on this earth. And he's wonderful in this. He's obnoxious. He's got some of the best lines. It's a joy to have him in there. Also, Robert Picardo pops up, another Joe Dante regular, which always makes me smile. Dennis Leary knocks it out of the park as the CEO, Gil Mars. David Cross and Jay Moore are Erwin and Larry, respectively. I think this was the first time I ever saw David Cross in a film, actually. And I couldn't go without mentioning the voice cast of the movie. We've already said Tommy Lee Jones as Chip Hazard and Frank Langella as Archer, emissary of the Gorgonites. But the rest of the Commando Elite are voiced by, you ready for this? Are you ready for this? George Kennedy, Jim Brown, Ernest Borgnine, Clint Walker. They're all from the Dirty Dozen. So you're already bringing in this kind of, they're a military force. We want to have that kind of familiarity in the sound. You guys, in you come. And joining them is Bruce Dern, who's the voice of Link Static, communications expert. Meanwhile, the Commando Elite are of course facing off against the Gorgonites. The Gorgonites are voiced by Ocular, who's just the one that makes all the little squeaky noises, is voice actor, prolific voice actor Jim Cummings. I was surprised it wasn't Frank Welker. He normally is the animal noises guy. But Frank Langella is Archer. But Christopher Guest, Michael McKean and Harry Shearer voiced the other ones, like taking split roles. So this is Spinal Tap are the voice of the Gorgonites. Because why not? Things to look out for, reasons why I love the movie. It is full of wanton destruction. It is incredibly creative with how the toys fashion weapons. There is a terrifying sequence, maybe not terrifying, more goofy frightening, where the Gwendy dolls come to life. Gwendy are basically Barbie, and Christy has a collection of Gwendy dolls that she's had since childhood, and they're all on her shelves, and you know, it's like, oh cool, that's why she would randomly hang out at the toy shop sometimes to meet the new kid, like, because she sort of, not publicly, but has a collection of toys. The Gwendy dolls get brought to life using one of the butchered Commando's chips, and they're voiced by Christina Ricci and Sarah Michelle Gellar, and they are frightening because unlike those guys who were built and the chips are inside them, this is basically they've gone in and they have Sid from Toy Story a load of Barbie dolls and strapped like razor blades and scalpels to their arms. Freaky stuff. The entire third act alone is worth the price of admission as a set of maybe 40, 50 plus Commando Elites at first try to invade the house to get to the Gorgonites, cutting off the power, firing nails, and just... This film is destruction incarnate, but in a family-friendly way. It was not intended that way, and as a result, because of that teenage movie in there, it feels very much like an 80s kids movie as opposed to a 90s one. It feels like a Return to Oz, it feels like a Goonies, it's got that mean streak in there, but it's not off-putting, it's not unwelcoming. It's like, hey, this one gonna get nasty. Let's have fun. Small Soldiers is an absolute delight, and I was reminded of it this week simply because I went to my dad's house and we put it on. And I was like, why have I not talked about that on Big Damn Love? It seemed appropriate since we've spent the last two episodes of mine talking about Gremlins 1 and 2. So, have you seen Small Soldiers? Do you love it? If you haven't seen it, it's on YouTube. On here, if you're in the UK, it's £2.49, something like that, to watch on YouTube and own. Buy it. You'll have a blast. If you don't want to buy it on air, find the DVD. It'll be cheap. It will be cheap. I think there's a Blu-ray even. Small Soldiers is great. I big damn love it. It is short, simple, tiny, nasty, fun, entertaining little beast of a movie, much like its central characters. And I'm probably going to go and watch it again now. We'll see you next time.